When Apple introduced HomePod back in 2018, it almost immediately suffered from some kind of identity crisis. It was a really powerful speaker for $350. And Apple wanted you to know it was a really great speaker. They had put a ton of tech, a ton of research and development into creating something that had a beam-forming array and could sense its place in a room and could fill a room with this surround-type speaker. It was really an impressive piece of technology. It was really a premium loudspeaker, and then it had all of this great tech to make it a smart speaker. And I think if JBL or Klipsch or even Sonos or Bang & Olufsen put out some kind of a bookshelf speaker at that price point, it would have been considered a bargain. But almost immediately the narrative became, well, it's a smart speaker for $350. And that became appropriately kind of a referendum or a discussion about Siri and its capabilities versus other smart capabilities like with Amazon or Google products. Usually if the market doesn't understand something, that's the responsibility of the marketer. And it was a narrative that Apple could never really break out of. The false equivalency was, well, I can buy a $50 smart speaker from Amazon and Apple's trying to do the same for $350. No, it wasn't the same at all. But we never really got past that for people. So when there's a tension or an underperformance like that in the marketplace, companies really have one of three options. Better articulate the value proposition. What is this thing? What is it for? Better understand or refine the marketplace. Who is it for? Or tweak with pricing. Apple didn't really spend any time on the first two. They just tweaked with pricing. So what was the $350, I think, pretty fair price, dropped to $299. Even better. But it didn't really change the conversation at all. In fact, a lot of people just read it as, oh, Apple believes that they overpriced it in the first place. They're trying to come down to earth. So now we have HomePod Mini, which is really another incredible feat of technological achievement. All of this powerful sound, and it is pretty powerful and it sounds pretty good. Plus all of this smart tech inside this tiny package that now is only $99. But a lot of the questions still remain. And a lot of the old narratives and arguments are still there. Has Apple really answered the first two critical questions, or have they just, again, tweaked with pricing, albeit with a new product? And in doing that, putting something out at less than a third of the original price, are they just playing into the narrative that, yeah, we had too expensive of a smart speaker the first time. Now we're better in that range that you like of $99. Or could Apple be doing a better job of answering, what exactly is HomePod Mini, and who is it for?
My name is Chris Bintliff, and these are transmissions from Not Really Rocket Science, where we study the technology, techniques, learning, and lifestyle of the modern marketing engine. It's appropriate to make some comparisons between HomePod Mini and HomePod, and that starts with some interesting packaging decisions in the unboxing. The HomePod box was very minimal, with the word HomePod in a smaller size type set in the San Francisco font, and an interesting but simple illustration of HomePod's cool fabric cover indicated on the sides. If you got black, the illustration was in black. If you got white, it was in white. The Mini uses full-color product photography on the box, with HomePod now set in a thin or light San Francisco font and a distorted Mini consistent with their digital marketing, set with the Siri color flow or gradient that HomePod uses to show Siri's in action on the device. We see that on the top of the box with a top-down view too. I wonder what the thinking behind that is, if there's thinking that the boxes will be more on display in secondary retail environments like big box stores. Inside the box is nothing remarkable, save the 20-watt USB-C charging adapter. This is actually a really bulky adapter to be on the business end of powering up an otherwise tiny device. It's going to be awkward behind a shelf or nightstand or however a lot of people will want to use this thing. So curiosity 2 on this is, Why USB-C and not just a regular AC plug for HomePod Mini, which might have been cheaper to produce and more convenient? Another interesting thing about the adapter is its standalone price tag of $19. It certainly doesn't cost $19 for Apple to manufacture it, but as a value add to the HomePod Mini that Apple didn't extend to the new iPhone 12, you have to buy the power adapter separately. It essentially puts the price tag on the HomePod Mini at $80. That's pretty crazy, considering Apple just doesn't sell much at a price point like that. You can buy 2 Apple Watch straps or a HomePod Mini, a 96-watt USB-C power adapter and a cable, or a HomePod Mini. I don't know how Apple designed, developed, and manufactured this thing where they can sell it so inexpensively, and it makes me wonder what their margins and profits are on it, the amount of money they get to keep after the expense of producing it. It's crazy inexpensive for how powerful this thing is. So let's get into how powerful this thing is. Let's start answering our initial question: how do we know HomePod is working? This HomePod Mini is going to sit on my nightstand next to my bed, replacing an OG HomePod. I have several HomePods throughout my house. They've gone on sale so frequently since their launch in 2018, and the occasional open box or refurbished unit made them even easier to accumulate over the years. Here's how I use HomePod. Most regularly in my office, where I have 2 HomePods connected in a stereo pair. I use these daily for listening to music. I hate to use the phrase, I'm not an audiophile, but on the other hand, I have decades of history of using reference monitors. I've produced and engineered a lot of music, and once I took a class where we were tested on the frequencies of all kinds of white, pink, and brown noise. So I'm also not clueless about this stuff. HomePod is a tremendous achievement in sound, particularly for this size, and music coming out of them sounds amazing. The room-filling sound produced by its array of technology inside is no joke either. Every once in a while, I'll have the stereo connection between my speakers break for some reason, and it might take me some time to even notice it, having to put my ear next to the speakers to tell me if they're on, and I'm like 3 or 4 feet away from them. The room-filling sound is that good. HomePod Mini isn't that, and let's not expect it to be when it's this small and for just $99. It sounds good, really good. It's much louder than I thought it would be. The sound stage, or how it makes the room feel like it's filled with sound, is much bigger than I thought it would be. The dynamics, meaning how loud some things are or how soft some things are in the way that they should be, sound on point. There's no way I can demonstrate this to you over YouTube because the ultimate sound output is in your own space, not mine, but nothing's mushy or tinny as you might expect. It's better than fine for the use case HomePod Mini is really designed for, I think. Small, out of the way, passive listening to music. My music sources are primarily Apple Music, which I subscribe to, and that's as simple as asking Siri to play whatever I want. A secondary source is other stuff on my phone, apps that I use, or some YouTube channels, or sometimes Howard Stern on the SiriusXM app. For these, I'll either direct the music from my phone to my HomePod pair, or I'll tap my phone to one of the HomePods that are just an arm's length away, essentially handing off the sound. HomePod Mini introduces some of the only new functionality to that scenario with its U1 chip, which if you have an iPhone with a U1 chip like iPhone 12, it'll make that handoff even more seamless. This doesn't change much for me, but I can see this being really useful for somebody who wants to, say, take a podcast they've been listening to on HomePod Mini with them without missing a word when they leave the house. One of the most no-brainer, obvious, and awesome uses for HomePod Mini would be stereo AirPlay speakers from an iMac, Mac Pro, or MacBook. Yet this still isn't available. There's a convoluted and inconvenient hack to make this happen, which MacRumors covers. I'll link to it in the description. But even then, there are all kinds of latency issues. It's too bad because HomePod Mini is a perfect use case for better Mac connectivity. Because I have a HomePod in every main room of our house, it's easy to play music anywhere. My family uses this sometimes on weekends or evenings. It's especially great during the holidays to just ask Siri to play some Christmas music everywhere, and the whole house is full of sound. Speaking of Siri, here's how I use the digital assistant of HomePod. Voice-activated Siri is basically my only interface with HomePod. I almost never actually touch HomePod to do anything. Volume control is handled on my phone, my Apple Watch, or by telling Siri to turn it down a little or set volume at 80% or whatever. The microphones in HomePod are excellent, and so far HomePod Mini feels just as responsive. In the kitchen, we'll have music playing or a lot of noise around us, and it's no thing to ask Siri on HomePod to set a timer, which we do multiple times a day. When it's time to watch a movie, I'll ask Siri to turn on some lights or turn off some others. In my iPhone 12 Pro Ultimate review, I shared a shortcut I use most mornings, which is one of many automations I have running around my house. Just about every room in the house is smart in some way, and almost all of them are HomeKit enabled. So with a HomePod accessible almost everywhere, and not living in a very big house, you'll often hear me or somebody in my family calling out in no particular direction for Siri to do something, like turn on lights, or share a forecast, or set a timer or reminder, double check that the garage door is closed. I'll share more about my smart home setup in other videos if you're interested, but suffice to say that I count on HomePod to manage many aspects of my household. I use Siri to support just about every function of my personal and professional life, from messaging to calendars to reminders. I also use HomePod as a speakerphone, and HomePod Mini will be really great on somebody's desk or in an office or using as a speakerphone.
Everybody be quiet. I'm recording some voiceover over here. I'm looking at you, Rocket.
Intercom is a new aspect that we're already using in our house, and it's more crazy convenient affordances. I use it to alert family in another room of a grocery order incoming or ask if we should order pizza or whatever. I'm just getting familiar with some of these behaviors, so I'm not using intercom yet on my Apple Watch or iPhone on the regular, but where I used to text somebody to say, I'm on my way home, or hey, should I pick up some ice cream, only to have that message not received on the other end for whatever reason, I'm glad to have another way to communicate with my home.
My aunt used to work as a human cannonball. She wasn't sure she was any good at it until she got fired.
I've been creating this video so far aligned with what Apple prioritized on the HomePod Mini marketing page on their website. Room-filling sound, intelligent assistant, control your smart home. I'll talk about privacy later, but this brings us to the second part of my original question. Who then is HomePod for? Well, let's back up and tick the boxes I represent as an ideal HomePod customer. A person who cares maybe more than many about sound and sound quality. HomePod Mini necessarily compromises that. You're not getting the sound quality of HomePod, but you're definitely not getting bad sound. So basically, do you like listening to music or podcasts? Then this thing is for you. But wait, I'm also an Apple Music subscriber, which is a big part of making HomePod convenient. I could be a Spotify subscriber and AirPlay the music from my phone to HomePod, but that's a lot of points of friction. Pandora and Amazon Music integrations are on the way, so we'll see how those work out. And of course, I need an iPhone just to set the thing up. So who is HomePod Mini ideally for? Initial criteria includes iPhone user and Apple Music subscriber. Oh, and a person who has Wi-Fi. Don't forget that. HomePod is not a Bluetooth speaker. Okay, let's get into Siri. Using Siri requires new behaviors for people. My wife, for instance, who is not a nerd like me, is constantly not using Hey Siri, and instead tries activating with only Siri, do this thing and that thing, and then is frustrated when Siri doesn't listen as expected. Lack of conversational skills from Siri can make that awkward. I can't say, hey Siri, add milk to my grocery list, and have her say, okay, and then follow up with, and eggs too. I have to start over with, hey Siri, add eggs to my grocery list. This isn't natural behavior for like anybody who doesn't understand with some precision how Siri works. When things like that are frustrating or confusing, it doesn't encourage or reinforce continued use or curiosity or exploration. It actively discourages it, just frustrates people. I think the huge majority of people who will use Siri for HomePod will do basic things. Asking to play something, set timers, whatever. People who have Siri manage other parts of their lives, like me, calendars, reminders, things like that, again, learned behaviors, I think that audience is actually really small. Maybe it's growing, maybe it's larger than I think, but there are far more people who don't even understand Siri can do stuff like that than are actually using it. And never mind that, again, for that life management stuff to be true, you have to be using Apple services like the Reminders app or syncing to an Apple Calendar. So adding to the ideal customer criteria, probably more than a basic familiarity and comfort with using Siri and integration into other Apple services. Control your smart home. Well, look, you have to have leveled up nerd cred to even care about this. There's a required digital literacy that a lot of people don't have, and more importantly, don't understand the value of having in order to have a smart home. So this is a really niche audience that slims down the ideal market even further. Private and secure, which I haven't talked about yet. This just isn't important enough to enough people. Because privacy is so opaque with smart devices, people don't know what it means. And telling them is both boring and scary. Tell people their Echo devices are listening in and recording their conversations, and they'll say, "What? I don't want that." But they probably won't stop using Echo devices, and they certainly won't stop shopping at Amazon. So good on Apple. Their privacy policies are important to people like me. But altogether, all we're doing here is demonstrating what a tiny sliver of the world is an ideal HomePod customer. Now, of course, you don't need to have all these characteristics to get a ton of value from HomePod or HomePod Mini. You may only ever use HomePod Mini to listen to podcasts, and that's it. Or to stream your Spotify because it's no big deal for you. Great. But this brings me to Apple's HomePod and HomePod Mini marketing. There's been a popular conversation around HomePod and now Mini that pits as its primary competition other smart speakers. Fair enough, but I think that's incomplete. The biggest competition to HomePod or HomePod Mini is the biggest competition any of us in business face, which is the status quo. Think about somebody in an apartment or dorm room, or maybe with sketchy Wi-Fi. That person is very happy pressing play on their phone or Android device, tapping speaker, and just listening to music through their phone, which phones are increasingly getting good sound output, or listening to their headphones, which are getting increasingly good. Other people in that situation are paired to a Bluetooth speaker, which you can argue makes listening to music on a speaker even easier, because you don't fiddle with any tapping or handing off. As long as you're paired, you just press play. Your iPhone can already listen for Hey Siri commands to send a message, add to calendar, or even intercom with the right OS updates. Very few of us are tinkering with shortcuts or skills or whatever, not on the regular and not a lot. There's a line between when digital assistants are assisting and when they're just giving us more stuff to deal with. I think this is the mindset most people have. And so most people are happy with whatever they're doing, including nothing at all. All of these are examples of the status quo of potential HomePod customers. So if Apple wants to overcome that, to sell HomePod to more than the relatively small market segments I've talked about, they need to encourage people out of their status quo. I need a compelling reason to stop using what I've been using. Apple used to be much more intentional about this. The Mac versus PC commercials were an example. Show me what I'm doing now that isn't as good as what I could be doing. Or at least, show me what I could be doing that I'm not doing now. I think Apple can do a much better job with interruptive marketing, like TV commercials or billboards or print ads, stuff like that, to more actively cultivate, if not an ideal HomePod customer, at least a more involved one. For instance, remember this very cool HomePod commercial in 2018 with FKA Twigs and directed by Spike Jonze? Really cool brand amplifier, very interesting aesthetic and energy. But find the actual use case in this otherwise really snazzy commercial, and it's here. When she says to play something that she'd like.
Play me something I'd like.
Okay.
This did what? Show me I can talk through Siri and this thing will play music? Is that it? Is this a Bluetooth speaker? Does this connect to my phone? For that matter, it assumes I understand it's a speaker at all. It doesn't really look like one. Or that I'll infer that from the directive to play music. Well, maybe it's just a listening box to talk to other speakers somewhere around my house. This commercial is for informed Apple and iPhone users who already know what HomePod is and what it's good for. I don't know if there's a television campaign in mind for HomePod Mini, but I suspect this commercial is designed to be for that. It's fun and active, and the music is interesting, and, well, what even is this thing? What does pressing on it do? What do those colors mean? At least the 2018 commercial showed a human being interfacing with the device using her voice. This doesn't show that, so does it mean I can't use my voice and I can only use my finger? Now, business-wise, just about everything from Apple is going up and to the right. They're clearly doing the right things. They don't need any of my advice when it comes to marketing. But that's what I do, so here it is unsolicited. I mentioned the Mac versus PC ads, and it's really easy to throw back to retro marketing and reminisce on some imaginary good old days, but that's not interesting to me. It was just good marketing. HomePod Mini could borrow from some other old Apple marketing. Let me sketch it out. Look at this very first iPod commercial. Dude bopping to music at computer, surrounded by CDs on his desk. does some kind of file management, unplugs and picks up some little device with headphones, continues bopping.
Cause every day and every night I'm slamming the bubbly Diet Coke from the stud down on the corner block. I don't even
Oh, I get it. He's taking his music with him on that little thing.
You know I'm a handle my own business. I'm a boss, baby, I'm a
iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Now, see how the iPod commercial evolved over time. A single person, because it's a personal device, in silhouette on a vibrant background. The only thing in white standing out in stark contrast is the device in hand and the iconic white headphones, which became ubiquitous. Look at everything happening in this seemingly simple commercial. Personal experience, high energy and vibrant, dancing as a product of the headphones in their ears connected to a device. What device? Ah, iPod. So here's an idea. Let's throw back to that. In part to acknowledge the obvious evolution of starting with iPod and 1,000 songs in your pocket to now streaming music to a tiny ball on your table. So let's imagine a girl and put her in the familiar, iconic setting of the old iPod ad, except it's a ball seemingly floating in space that she's dancing to. The music is interrupted by an intercom chime, and her mom's voice sings something like, 5 minutes to bedtime. And as soon as we hear mom's voice, the spell is broken.
5 minutes to bedtime.
And the vibrant color and silhouette transform to a real setting, a real situation. We see the girl in her room, HomePod on her desk or dresser. We see mom talking to her HomePod from another room. The girl then says, Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes. Then maybe she says, turn lights to bedtime, but instead of getting dim and soft, the lights get bright and blinky. Then she says, play my bedtime mix, but instead of relaxing music, it's more heavy dance music, and she goes back to dancing like crazy. As we see HomePod Mini branding, we hear mom's voiceover saying, hey Siri, add earplugs to my shopping list. So this single ad just showed that HomePod can play music, intercom capabilities, set a timer, control smart home, and add something to a shopping list. I think that's intriguing. Even if you don't know what that stuff is, even if it doesn't compel you to go buy something, you're asking questions now and thinking about, do I have that in my life? Could I benefit from that? Here's another commercial idea. Super vibrant again, but it's just a guy listening to a podcast, so no crazy music this time. He seems to be enjoying his morning coffee or whatever. He's relaxed. When he says, Siri, what's on my calendar this morning? Suddenly the scene comes to reality, and Siri responds that his day looks all clear. He says perfect. As we hear Ira Glass in the background saying, from WBEZ Chicago comes This American Life, maybe we see the guy do a handoff from HomePod Mini to his phone. He's going to take his podcast with him. And as we see HomePod Mini branding come on screen, maybe we hear his voice ask, what's the weather for the rest of today? And she says something like sunny and 76.
Those are just sketches, just ideas, and I think they would be made a lot better by a group of really capable marketers all together putting their 2 cents into it. But the point is, or the idea, let's show people the benefits of, the outcomes possible from, and not just the cool small ball that has a ton of really cool tech inside of it. Let's show them what it could be for them. If you're watching this because you're thinking, should I get HomePod Mini? Probably you should. There's a lot dumber ways to spend $100. And the price point now makes it so that it's easier to absorb if you don't want to do all of those things. If you don't fit all of this incredibly and increasingly narrowing criteria for the ideal HomePod Mini customer. Maybe you don't need to be ideal. If all you want to do is listen to podcasts in the kitchen, this thing is probably pretty capable. If you want to listen to music, if you want to do other things, this thing is really capable. At this price point, my hope is that it can encourage people to get a little bit more familiar and then maybe comfortable and then maybe demanding of the smart home features, because that will push the smart home and the smart home assistants forward when more of us are using them and understanding how to use them. Or maybe you'll just listen to the occasional podcast, play some music, set some timers, and that's good enough for you. At $99, you can do a lot worse. That's what I think. What do you think? I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and comment on transmissions from Not Really Rocket Science. Learn more at notreallyrocketscience.com.